Changes brought in the USDA report for corn and some losses possible in Argentina for soybeans. We are going to discuss, of course, with Jerry Goodell right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, how are you today? For you, is not a huge surprise that we didn't see any changes for wheat and soybeans in the USDA Supply and Demand report.
No, those two decided to, the USDA decided that there wasn't enough things to prompt them to change any of their export situations. And that soybeans particularly had a very good week with lots of sales going on here to the Chinese and that. And so that one definitely didn't feel like it should be changed as the week went on. Over on the wheat side, of course, we've been pretty sluggish out there. We're slipping down. We were about 5 or 10 million behind last year, and we're now closer to 10 to 20 behind. But the biggest issue is involving what's going on in Argentina, as you kind of threw out there. The Argentine weather, definitely not something that you want to, despite everybody looking for La Nina to flip over here dramatically in the next 6 or 8 weeks. And we're going to go from, this tough conditions to all of a sudden back to neutral and maybe even going back to positive to the El Nino side here by March. I don't know. So far, Argentina hasn't got the message that that's what's going to happen. They still haven't. There's been some light showers around, and there's no doubt about that. But I wouldn't say that things are all that dandy in that particular area. But that didn't. The interesting twist on it, the the USDA's estimate for Argentina on wheat, they put that back down there 3 million metric tons. And that definitely was an interesting one. Also, they actually took about 1.2 million down on the Canadian number. I kind of spaced out and forgot that the Canadians actually dropped their number 1 million metric tons last week versus in my calculations. But at the same time, they also increased the numbers on the wheat production for Australia by 2.3. So it's all balanced out. The number on world carryover stock has been, as low as it's been since 2015-16, and they ended up taking it down just 500,000 metric tons or 600,000, and that. So definitely saying there, but hey, what's the wheat price done today? But instead, keep its weakness going. We did have a little bounce midweek, but with, the traders just don't have any faith in the corn and soybeans, so they have to find somebody to spread their position off. So they want to sell wheat. I know that the world's feels like that they're going to get by on the wheat. But it's kind of interesting that they've been so tough on that particular crop, to say the least. There, from there, soybeans, as we said, that came through at 220, unchanged number there. But there's definitely some concerns on the weather patterns on soybeans too, because they've delayed planting some of their beans, and that. I think they're up to. I think they sowed. Bonus Series said the number was over 30% now, but the wheat harvest is only 42%, and so that also has delayed some of the second crop bean plantings that happen after the wheat has been seeded in the Bonus Series province.
Yes, as far as the market goes, we had a stronger soybean prices in the end of this week. But I think we could look forward and say there's room for more because it seems that the production in Brazil is quite significant so far in the eyes of the USDA, but I'm not really sure if there wouldn't be any more losses, especially in the southern states.
Exactly right. I think that's the interesting little twist here. Officially our friends at CONAB did not really uh, making adjustments in their soybean production number that was released yesterday, I should say, on Thursday, and that they left at 153.5 million metric tons. And that was kind of the reason why I thought maybe we would see an increase in the Brazilian number. But USDA held court there and left it unchanged. And the interesting thing is that their corn number with the interesting twist is we kind of know sometimes the weather patterns that are in Argentina are also impacting our friends in Rio Grande do Sul, your old stomping grounds there. And so they ended up slipped that number down a little bit on the corn production, about a metric ton, or a little under that, because of the issues in Rio Grande. And because the interesting thing is that Rio Grande used to be the heart of agriculture in Brazil, as we well know, but things have moved substantially further north. But the livestock portion, along with Goiás for beef and things like that, are really important areas in that. So it's important to have a good crop. And last year's crop was not good. Rio Grande and even parts of Paraná were beat up on this same dry pattern approach that's impacting Argentina. It moved all the way into the southern provinces and past Paraguay, which really had a tough crop last year. And so all of a sudden, here we are. Maybe there's some indications that this thing could have an impact on those same two or three lower provinces there of Paraná, excuse me, Rio Grande do Sul, Paraná, and also Rio Grande. So we got to keep an eye on the weather that's going on, and if it does spread north. Now, there seems to be this tremendous optimism that all of a sudden things are going to change because of the warming of the Pacific, and things are going to flip over and all that, and the Argentinian southern Brazil crops are going to be saved in a big way. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it doesn't. I think really that there still needs to be a cautionary tone, and I think that's what the USDA did here on their numbers. From there, the USDA made the adjustments in the poor exports trend we've seen in corn, and it continues to be excuse me, interesting that the Chinese have been very limited buyers in here of U.S. corn. They seem to get the impression they can hang out the way into next year to buy corn from Brazil, because there was some shipments of corn that went out from Brazil to kind of a test case, if you will. And there's supposed to be some more that potentially going to go out here, maybe up to 1 million metric tons, and that. But their situation over there is, I think, interesting in the fact that I realized that maybe their crop in the north was better than it could have been along the way. But the whole issue comes in China, is that the southern half, particularly areas south of the Yangtze, and that is an area where a lot of livestock is at, and it's very difficult to get corn from Manchuria in the northeast down to those areas. So it's easier to import this stuff. And at this point, we'll see if the U.S. still gets a little bit of corn business here versus everybody expecting all the Chinese needs to be filled by the Brazilians.
Now, I wonder to listen your wheat outlook because it's quite a significant change compared to the earlier in the year when the war started, that we all thought there was going to be a huge famine in the world.
Definitely. Well, with the lack of stuff moving out of the Black Sea, both from the Chinese, from the Russians and also the Ukrainians. Now things have the food corridor situation is. I think it's interesting that the Russians are willing to keep that thing going. They did extend it. Now the interesting twist about it is since we've extended, we've really had not so fast of of shipments out of there. Uh, Partly because I think the Ukrainians and the world importers were cautious about sending boats in there and then get trapped in there, so they decided not to maybe do some things towards the end of the period there around the 20th of November, and then since then it's so interesting and that all of a sudden the inspectors down in Turkey there as they go through the Black Sea and out into the Caribbean, all of a sudden they've had a really stressful time here. They are not in a big mood to inspect a lot of boats, and they're just wore out and all this kind of stuff. And that's also limited. There's like I've heard as high as 75 boats sitting there waiting to leave, and so there's a situation where the Ukrainians, I just saw that this week we may be out of the Odessa area, which is the big one. Maybe they've sent out like one day was 4, one day was 5, and like 1 or 2 the other 2 days. So not very many boats are leaving the primary areas of Ukraine. So that's been a real switcheroo here, and it's I don't know what the psychological level on this wheat is definitely considering the fact that we just talked about the issues in Argentina and the reduction of the crop there, and now the situation about really not getting as much shipped out to people. Um, the wheat is definitely the whipping boy for grain traders at this point, but I'm not sure that they should be so confident that wheat's going to turn around and be so prevalent, just as you mentioned here going forward.
Yes, and what are you looking forward next week?
Well, it's I kind of feel like that, like you just pointed out, these soybeans have really been slowly going up, and that we've kind of tested this $15 mark situation. I kind of felt like we were going to be kind of quiet and not see this kind of strength here in the soybeans. But the other thing that's been kind of interesting here is that the soybean oil, which was a darling of the world here, and that uh, about the demand for soybean oil. So everybody was long oil, short meal. Then you turn around and they have the issues in Argentina where all of a sudden that's a really big, still a producer of meal for a lot of places in the world. And if the soybean crop is not off to a good start and things like that, I've heard some people the weakness in the bean oil and part of this is because of the fact that people really believe the EPA's numbers that they put out uh, late last week, that all of a sudden, there's no big deal here about bean oil demand. Yeah, the problem is that a bunch of oil traders don't understand the world of biodiesel or bio renewable diesel by any means, and the fact guaranteed one of the major players of the world in soybean processing, Bunge, came out with a statement this week that there was potentially going to be 5 million uh, uh, more tons of production capabilities by 2024-25, and that's and everything's going there. Everything I've seen is that way. So I think, unfortunately, there's been a little bit of a head fake in here, and so all of a sudden the oil shouldn't be as negative as it is. The bean meal is higher, and that's what's carrying the boat here in this rally. Because of course, don't forget, 80% of the value of the soybean is still the meal. And if Argentina's not going to have the production, then the world's got to look here. And so, and at this bean oil scenario, in its own way, I think has been downplayed with bad information out there, and it'll come back to the positive from there. But looking at next week's situation, I kind of feel like that we're going to continue to kind of move along sideways here and maybe put some excitement. Now, the interesting thing, don't forget, you talked about the soybeans. If we get a close over $15, we could get a little more excitement because there's been a lot of people using that as their stop on some short sales in beans. And that now the craziness about it is that corn might try to trickle up that direction. I don't know about wheat. It's probably going to be grudgingly going up because there's going to have a lot of people be short that market against maybe a flip over on the beans at this point.